Okay, as promised, we're on to part 2, and that's lap 6. We are in 4th place. Alonso ahead of us, Vettel behind us, our teammate very far behind us in 22nd place, which shows you where the Lotus really should be running. This isn't down to me that it's running this well, it's just down to the fact that the AI is terrible, and the actual simulation of how good these cars are or how much grip they should have isn't very accurate to real life. I mean, the Lotus shouldn't even be anywhere near the front of the grid. Here's a bit of a mistake coming up. Bit unfortunate, but it's Alonso, so I'm sure he'll forgive me. Not. Basically, I got blinded by the spray, missed my braking point, and I tried to avoid crashing into him by going down the inside and hopefully making the corner, but I didn't. I locked up. Even with ABS on, I locked the wheels and just skated straight on into him. Luckily, it gained a position for me, but karma being what it is, I'm gonna get my comeuppance here. Maybe it's just because I believe in that sort of thing, and I made myself run wide on that corner just so I can say, right, there we go, I didn't earn that position, you can have it back. Although it was Vettel that took it, not Alonso, but that doesn't matter to me. I'd rather Vettel was ahead than Alonso, to be honest. Although I kind of predicted that Alonso would win the 2011 World Drivers' Championship, just because last year he came so close and he seems really fired up, and Ferrari looked like the ones to beat. They looked like they had the pace and reliability, but come the actual race in Australia, that doesn't seem to be the case. It's blatantly Red Bull miles ahead of anyone. Even without using KERS, they were just destroying everybody, including McLaren. But McLaren, remarkably, after starting with a complete dog of a car, have made a bit of a comeback. Reportedly, or supposedly, that's because they ditched their overly complicated exhaust system. I think someone on the BBC coverage, Martin or someone like that, likened it to like an octopus kind of setup. I'm not sure what that means, whether they had like multiple exhaust exits under the floor at different points to produce the blown diffuser or blown floor effect, which you've got working quite well on the Renault and the Red Bull, but it proved too unreliable and too difficult to drive, so they've gone for the wizard sleeve approach, which Red Bull have, which is, I'm guessing, a kind of elongated exhaust exit, which blows onto the rear diffuser. They showed it in the Grand Prix actually, just before, on Martin's grid walk, where they had the usual Red Bull cronies trying to block the view, which is quite funny, but they never seem to like get the fact that, as he said, all the other teams will have detailed pictures and drawings of these already, so there's not really much point in blocking the BBC from seeing it, or the fans, but they still do it. But yeah, basically by taking a step backwards, McLaren gained a lot of reliability and pace. I mean, Lewis's floor kind of fell off halfway round the race, but he managed to get to the finish, so I'm assuming it wasn't a huge problem, and he managed to get away with scrutineering as well by the looks of it, and they've not disqualified him, so they obviously deemed that it was accident damage rather than, you know, them gaining an advantage by running the plank low, or just what they were worried about at the time. On the BBC they were talking about whether he would get punished for that, because there's a regulation saying you have to have a certain number of, or certain amount of plank left on the underside of the car, so that they don't run the cars really low, because the lower you can run your car, the more downforce you'll get. It's very beneficial. That's why there's always controversy about potentially having flexible wings last year, or 2010, which is this season in the Formula 1 game. But that I still reckon they had some sort of system going on like that, because you look at how low the wings were running, scraping off the floor at times compared to other cars. But then again, I think it could have a lot to do with the fact that Red Bull run a completely different suspension setup to teams like McLaren. I mean, you see how stiff the McLaren's car is, especially in Australia. You see it over the bumps. It must be so uncomfortable to actually be in that thing. Compare it to the Red Bull, and it just looks like a completely different car. The Red Bull looks quite soft. It's able to take the bumps and the curves, but the McLaren is just like rock solid. It looks like it's got no suspension at all. It's just bouncing off of every little divot and bump and rut in the road. But it's quick. Whatever's quick, it's interesting. You've got two different concepts, both nearly equally as quick as each other, and the Red Bull got the advantage at the moment, but we know that McLaren have got the development, so they'll be able to sort it out. Now, Red Bull didn't actually run their KERS, which is quite an interesting thing. I remember watching the Friday practices. They were telling Vettel to use the KERS urgently because he had too much charge generated in the KERS system, and he wasn't using it. And if you do that, it overheats and becomes unreliable. So they've obviously decided to just ditch it for the remainder of the weekend. And they didn't want to tell people that before the race, because obviously if we told everyone that, then they would be trying to get an advantage at the start by, or maybe if they considered not using the KERS, they'd be like, oh, we better use it just at the start to beat the Red Bulls. But I don't think it didn't have an effect in the end. They did really well without it. And I think KERS is a load of bollocks anyway. Kinetic energy recovery system, it's got no purpose in Formula 1. It barely has a purpose in road cars. I mean, the systems in road cars are completely different, but the fact that they use batteries on a lot of the cars to actually store the energy is terrible, because the amount of greenhouse gases or pollution or whatever is caused by actually manufacturing those batteries and the systems to make it work far outweighs any gain you'll get or any saving you'll get in terms of energy from the actual device. I mean, it's like Priuses. They don't save the environment in any way. You can get a cheap Volkswagen Polo diesel which will do more mileage, and you can. It's not, the cars themselves have like minimal impact on the environment. I've heard the statistic that cows burping actually produce more harmful greenhouse gases than every car on the planet. So it's like the farm. That's how ridiculous this is. The fact that F1's having to, somehow pander to these environmentalists. I mean, I was on the bandwagon when it all came out, like, oh, global warming and everything, but the more I delve into it and more you read about it, the more it seems like it's just an excuse to put more taxes on the motorists and other industries. When you hear the Conservatives talking about actually taxing companies for pollution, and then they're starting up new industries and all these, like making solar panels and wind farms and kinetic wave energy and stuff like that. They're making a lot of money out of it, and it's just slightly suspicious to me. I think it's just they're covering up the fact that they're actually trying to stop us running out of fossil fuels, which is the main problem. As I overtake Hamilton, or don't overtake Hamilton actually. See, he's running KERS. He's not in this, obviously, because it was, or the teams agreed not to use it in the 2010 season. But it's back now. But I went off on one about the environment there, didn't I? But interesting stat which I heard, basically that Iceland volcano, which went off, undid the last 5 years worth of CO2 saving which we did in the entire planet in the space of one afternoon. And you imagine how many of those volcanoes are going off all the time. We don't really have as much of an impact as we think on certain things. The real issues are deforestation and actually water supply and overpopulation and obviously hunger. They're the biggest issues. Like whether we can run cars or not is irrelevant, especially in Formula 1, because Formula 1's a specialist thing. It doesn't have an impact. Like it barely has an impact at all, because not everyone's driving around in Formula 1 cars, and it's not happening every single day of the week. So why we have these systems on there, I don't know. I mean, they got new engine regulations coming in 2013 which sound terrible. I mean, little tiny like 2 litre something or other engines that are like 4-cylinder turbocharged things, and they're going to be low revving and they're going to sound horrible. I mean, just bring back like nice high revving V12s, because you might as well. That's what the sport's about. Anyway, while I'm going off on one, this is going to be the end of part 2. Then I'm going to jump into part 3 as I'm chasing down Hamilton in 3rd place, heading on to lap 13, which is lucky for some. We're on lap 12 now. I'll see you in part 3.